What is going on, guys? Ryan here with a special edition of the Dent Digest live show. Wanted to kind of get this one in. It took a little while to get Paul and his schedule worked out, but I thought it was going to be such a good story and such good value to you guys that I wanted to make it happen. So I appreciate you joining me here on a Tuesday at 3. Hopefully you guys got enough notice because I was spamming Facebook and Instagram the last few days. So let's bring him on. Mr. Paul, what's up, Mr. Daly?
What's going on? Thanks for accommodating to make the schedule work. I really appreciate that.
You know, you're a busy guy. You know,
got busy.
Yeah. So, it obviously we're all working through the pandemic, and everybody's schedules kind of changed, and you're working from home, and family life is different. You're trying to homeschool your kids and figure it all out. How are you dealing through it?
We're getting through it pretty well, relatively speaking. I have an interesting situation where, my family, my wife homeschools the kids anyway. So like at the Daly household, it's kind of been like business as usual, except dad's in the basement most of the time. And I come up for air every once in a while, but I kind of come down in the morning and I just grind it for, a good long day. And then I emerge, but we're doing well. My wife's a big introvert. So in the beginning she was thrilled. And now we've gotten to the point where even she is sick of the pandemic. So we're ready to get out.
I'll tell you, it was a super sad story today. So my wife took my daughter to her school to pick up her stuff that was left there before the pandemic. And she pulls up, and I was getting ready for the show, and she's just got tears in her eye. And I'm like, what is wrong? And she picks up this bag, and it's full of all my daughter Macy's stuff. And it is a black trash bag with all of her stuff from school. And she says, a trash bag? Like, we couldn't do brown paper bags. We had to use a trash bag. Like, this kid's already dramatized because she's never going to see her kids again. And then you have all of her stuff in a trash bag. So I was just like,
that's the walk of shame right there.
What are you supposed to do? You know what I mean?
What grade is she in?
She's in kindergarten. I mean,
oh man, the kindergarten walk of shame.
It was just like, you gave him a trash bag. So we got a little bit of time. We got a lot to go over. I want to get rolling. I want to get into your story. So you built a company and sold it to a major corporation, which is a lot of guys that are in here, their dream. A lot of guys want to build a company and sell it. Let's kind of get into how you got into the reconditioning business and then to where you are now.
Sure. So I kind of got into the reconditioning business by accident, like a lot of other people in the industry. I got out of college at 22 years old. So we're talking back, I think it's 02 and 01, 02. Moved to upstate New York. I'm from the Philadelphia area, and I wanted to do so. I got my first job at a car dealership. I'd never been in a car dealership my whole life. Somebody at my church owned a dealership, a Chevy store, gave me a job as a service writer. I was like, I don't know anything about cars. He was like, well, I have technicians that know about cars. I need people that know about people. So I liked people. I always was in, customer service or hospitality through college, like waiting tables. So it was a good fit. I really enjoyed it. And about like 3 months into it, I saw the dent guy, right? I built a relationship with the dent guy, and watching him push dents in cars and realized there's this whole other industry in auto reconditioning. And I didn't know anything about like body work. I didn't know anything.
And that's the craziest thing, isn't that? When I first saw a dent guy, I was like,
that's a career. That's an industry, without a doubt.
So keep going. I didn't want to.
Interrupt all you want. It's your show. And so a friend of mine from college, he's in Maryland, and he was doing wheel repair, and he was telling me how great it was. And I initially thought I was going to go into full-time ministry with church. So I wanted something. I was like, oh, okay. And he was doing that, and he was making really good money doing wheel repair and still had a lot of free time and all that. So I was like, all right, let me try to do that. So I went down, I spent like a few hours with him, and was like every, can-do entrepreneur. I'm like, I can do that. Right, let's do this. So I went back, talked to the dealer principal, and I said, hey, I think this is the good direction for me. I'm thinking about this. It's a little weird because you're my boss, but you're also a mentor. What do you think? And he said, when you care about your people, you want what's best for them, not what's best for you. He said, I think you'll do really good at it. You should do it. And we walked out back, and he pulled a 1984 Chevy Astro off the wholesale line, gave it to me for $400. It had a rusted out oil pan. Transmission lines were rusted through. I fixed it, and I borrowed like like $2,000 or $3,000 from family, and I decided to start a wheel repair business, and that was the beginning. So I went down, got 2 days of really crappy training. I had no idea like why that one could be fixed and that one couldn't. And it was because, well, that one's a hubcap and that one's an aluminum wheel, right? I didn't know anything. I came back after 2 days, just started making mistakes. I didn't know how to clear cut, didn't know how to do anything. But fortunately, it was a time before wheel repair was really common, especially in upstate New York. So I was the first guy. So dealers were really like, where have you been all my life? You can fix that wheel so I don't have to replace it. Or
and you're like making your own pricing.
I guess I didn't know enough to price high at the time. So dealers, I was kind of like a real ignorant and optimistic kid. So dealers saw me coming, and before you know it, I was doing a lot for a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But long story short, I had a commitment to growing the company. Had no idea what it was to like, but I just started. I knew I wanted to grow the company, so I just put every dollar into that. For overnight success for the better part of 15 years, and just little by little, always built the company for the next level. So when I first started, I actually got an EIN and structured to have an employee, even though I didn't have one, and I had to learn all that stuff. And then once I had one, I structured the company for 10. Once I had 10, for 20. Once it was 20, we structured for 50. And 2 years ago, when the company sold, I was actually in the process of structuring for a 100-person organization because we had like 47 at the time.
Did you have some help with that, or were you just figuring it out on your own? The structure part.
Oh man, I had a lot of help. I mean, I read a lot, made a lot of mistakes. So a lot of the help came in the form of mistakes and just being an absolute consumer of business content. And this was before you could stream videos on YouTube. So a lot of books. A lot of questions. And as I progressed, I was able to bring a couple more people onto the team that had a little bit of experience there. But I realized toward the later years of business, the immense value in a mentor, or paying the money to get a professional to help you structure your company. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, I can figure that out on my own. Yeah. It was like, no, that's expensive. I don't want to spend a few $1,000s on advice. But really, in hindsight, had I done that in years like 6 and 7, the company probably would have been like twice as big than it was.
How many employees did you have?
We were approaching 50 when the company sold. So we were in the low to mid 40s.
And you were doing wheels.
Yep.
What
so
else?
we were doing wheels, paint work. Had a pretty substantial interior business with just not only interior repairs, but a big part of the business was a presentation service. Where we dyed carpets, did plastic, kept the vehicles nice. Built a big chunk of business around being consistent with that. And we did glass repair. We never did dents. Never got into dents. I think that sums it up. So wheels, interiors, presentation service, paintwork, glass.
So you were kind of well-rounded besides the dent repair.
Yep. And when we shifted out, like my next phase was really migrating and researching. We were moving full into trying to. I was fascinated by the concept of the averages, and I'm not like a math guy, but the thought, just thinking of what the consumer wants, what makes it easy for a dealer, what makes it easy for someone trying to price their vehicles with all the margin compression going on. Of
course. Like
someone knowing what their reconditioning bill is when they buy the car, can then buy it at the right price and then know they can sell it at the right price. So we were doing a lot of digging into the numbers to figure out what our averages are, so we could charge a flat rate per car for all the services. And we never quite got to pull through with that at the end, but I still believe a lot in that model.
It totally is. And you see a lot of the dealers, they'd rather write one check instead of 5 checks. It's just easier on their end. And then it also lets them regulate the number, regulate the cost.
It does. Writing the one check. So there's a couple different, like being an all-in-one vendor solution is beneficial because there's one point of accountability, right? I don't have to track down 7 people, right? This one has glass and an interior and a dent. So now all of a sudden it becomes this scheduling nightmare. Being able to give one person accountability, saying like, it's your job to make sure this car is reconditioned, it's just more efficient. Bottom line, it's more efficient. Now you add in a flat rate per car on top of that. I think it can make it even more efficient. It just takes more, I think it takes a little bit more vision and understanding of the holistic thing, because, as a vendor, I would get afraid like, oh man, the dealer's just going to, just throw me rat. They're going to buy crap at the auction now because they know it's one price. And then the dealer on the flip side too is like, well, I don't want to commit to paying for a car that maybe doesn't need anything.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you have a little bit of education and comfort that needs to happen on both sides of that equation. And the numbers do vet that out if you look at them, and you really can present them in the right way. And if you think about all the time, we calculated that as we started to do this, because we started with the flat rate on our interior services. And because we had this presentation service where we're going, we called it frontline management. We'll go in, dye the carpets, make sure everything looks nice, plastic, clean the OEM floor mats, present them nicely in the trunk. And then we go ahead and we would do that on every vehicle in the lot. It was all or nothing. You couldn't just have 10 cars, or you had to do them all or nothing, right? Some are like a late model in great shape, and you just groom it a little bit, make it look nice, put plastic down. Some cars have 80,000 miles on them, they're going to take you an hour to do, right? So it's like the balance. But what it came out as in like a really profitable business. And then we added interior repair on top of that, and we started charging a flat rate for interior repair, but with the same fear as like, oh well, if I do that, then I'm going to have to do like what usually would have been like a $200 bill for like $20. Like that doesn't make sense. Right. But you don't realize you make it up on the average. And the point is, if I ask every vendor, every reconditioner watching this live stream right now, or who watches it later, and you say, if you track the time you spend walking lots and track, so this is what we did. We did like a 30-day study, and we picked a few accounts and we started tracking. If you track the time it takes you to drive to the account, to walk the lot, to go in, wait for the manager and get the list approved, right? And then you have to find keys, and then you have to, when you do the work, right? And then you come back and you have to find the manager again and get him to sign, and you have to wait for the PO and get that written, and then you have to deal with the, right? So you think of that, and what we came out with is like, we were spending like 40 to 50% of our time doing all the other crap. Like, you guys know how it is. By the time you get the work approved, if you can just have work approved and start working, oh my gosh, it's like the best thing ever. So when we calculated that, we're like, wait, every system wants to find its way toward, when you add technology and information to it, it gets more and more efficient. So all of a sudden you take more efficiency into that system, and you take out all the inefficiencies, the walking lots, the finding the manager twice, right? To begin, you take all that out and you realize like, actually I can charge less for the service and make more than I ever did with my time, because it's efficient. Yeah. And it, like, once that light bulb went off, I was like, it's really just becomes a game of education at that point.
And it's getting your guys on board too, because just like you said, you could have a car that's a roach or a car that's really not going to take that long. But if you do split it up over the average is what's going to get you at the end of the day.
Yep.
You can't look at each individual car. That's how I look. Like in my business, I look at the long term. Mm-hmm. I don't look now. I look at how I treated this guy 3 years ago, and now he's a manager at a shop or a dealer. That's the same thing.
Yep. I completely agree. It's one of the vulnerabilities, I think, of our industry. When I first started, and now this is back in 2003, so a long time ago, right? Almost a full generation ago, right? 18 years, a generation. There are adults now that weren't on the planet when I started reconditioning.
Scary, right?
They may have been conceived though. So back then, there was this massive stigma that vendors had this, they were seen as bottom feeders, at least in the areas where I worked, which was upstate New York. So Buffalo, New York, all the way down, ended up migrating down back towards Philadelphia, where I'm from. And so there was this stigma that like, hey, like people look at car dealers and used car dealers like with a stigma. Well, it's like, I used to say the vendors are like the used car dealers, used car dealer, right? It's like, there's always somebody that gets it down the line, and it was vendors. And I refuse to believe that that's how that industry had to be. I was like, if you can uniform up, you can drive a nice graphic car, present yourself well, put on a clean shirt when you go talk to the manager, right? Have that respect, and eventually you'll be able to bring respect with you. It's not the industry, it's the person. And so changing that mindset was critical part of the success of my business. But what goes along with that is like, they say poverty in general, poverty isn't actually the financial situation. It's actually a mindset. And that's why you give someone with a poverty mindset, you give them cash, and guess what? It ruins them because they still have the same mindset. So I think this is very similar in the reconditioning world and had been in the past, and probably still that is this mentality of like this territorial and like instant, I need to do it now mentality and not looking at the long view, like you just said. And what that does is it totally suffocates your opportunity because you're so worried about this one car and you're so worried about making sure you don't get taken advantage of and your dander gets up, right? And you're ready to fight other vendors and you're ready to like yell at a dealer or you're afraid of your accounts. But that happens because you don't have the long view. And I can tell you that like the reason it worked for me is because I was always operating to the long view. Like you can't build a business with the intention of selling and think that that's not somehow going to change your business decisions in the day in, day out.
100%. You know, and you said it exactly. And it's funny that you said about clean shirts and logo trucks. And, you know, you look at the change. I'm still in the business. Obviously, you're not in that business anymore. But the change in our business to where you never saw guys. I remember seeing dent guys on lots with flip-flops, tank tops, and floppy hats. You know, I'm out there in all black shirts. Everybody's wearing the same uniform. Trucks are logoed. I think it gets to a point to what level you want to take your business to. You know,
it does.
When you have guys that come up like me, it happens all the time. Is this a franchise?
Mm-hmm.
No. This is all my disaster. But you know, but no,
well, look, it's like, and not even to hate on that stuff, because like if your goal is to be a sole proprietor and set your own schedule and wear flip-flops to work and totally shut down in the off season and spend a lot of time on your fishing boat, right? Like if that's your goal, then God bless you. Like this is the industry for you, right? But also know that you're vulnerable to the person that is looking down the line and is at some point going to present a better solution to the dealer. Because here's how this used to work, right? 10 years ago, as recent as 10 years ago, maybe as recent as like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, this industry was built on relationships from the bottom to the top, meaning that I have a relationship with the lot kid and we're cool, right? So he's trying to help me out. And then I have a relationship with the reconditioning manager or the service manager or the used car manager that's approving the work. He likes me, I like him, I take care of him, he approves my lists, right? No one's looking at the bill because like margins in used cars are great, right? Then all of a sudden margins start compressing. The internet comes online, right? And all of a sudden there's a lot of price competition because everybody knows what everybody else is paying for the car now. You have TrueCar, you have like these metrics, the real-time market data. So now dealers don't, the old adage was, every dollar you spend on reconditioning in your car, you get $2 back. And everybody believed that truth, right? Because it was the truth. And then that changed. So now no longer used cars are making the reconditioning decisions. Now it's the GMs, it's the CFO making the parameters on how much you can spend on reconditioning. So then the whole thing flipped. And now my relationship with the lot kid doesn't matter. I mean, it matters because he's a person and like it's good to have good relationships, but he's not approving it. The sales managers, like I can't make that decision, right? The whole industry shifted. And so now the guy with to bring this all the way back around, the guy with the flip-flops and the sun hat and the fishing boat, like, yeah, the used car manager can like him as much as they want. They can talk chop fishing all they want. But guess what? Now the CFO makes a decision and no one can say anything about it. So like both of those can work. But I think the flip-flops guy is more vulnerable than ever. But if he does great work, look, somebody that does great work is always going to have a living in this industry,
and
always.
If that's what you're looking, you know, the way you're planning it, then have at it.
Yeah, look, I mean, hey, there are a lot of times when I look back and I'm like, boy, I probably would have been really happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, not worrying about the pressures of multiple techs and multiple accounts, and the bigger accounts you get, right? And what you gotta, there's a parallel rail. My podcast this week, I talk about the parallel rails of life. With every good thing, there's a parallel rail that is a challenging thing, right? Kids are a blessing, but they're also really inconvenient and annoying, right? So if you get really big accounts where you do all the work across the board, great. It's great when you have it, but guess what? When you lose one of those accounts, it really, really hurts. And now that you've borrowed money and hired staff to service that account, you're in a way worse place than if you were just servicing them by themselves.
Yeah.
So I would never, ever, ever say that like either way is better than the other way.
No.
So, and I know there are all kinds of great people in this industry that are successful in both sides of that coin.
You know, and I think you're right. And I look at the situation now, and even with this pandemic that happened, the dealers that we do service aren't letting vendors in, and are starting to learn we can sell these cars without fixing this stuff.
Yeah.
Or if I have 10 cars that sell that we would usually fix, but only one person wants the dent repair or the bumper repair, and I can just send them to their house and I'm out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of changes that are going to happen after all of this is going on. You know, I don't know. It's an interesting time in business. And, you know, like I said, I was closed for 7.5 weeks, and we're still kind of figuring out what the market's doing. You know, some people are saving their money, but then on the other end, you've got people.
I think the biggest shift is,
I think
it's human behavior.
Yeah.
The real thing that we don't understand is what the human behavioral change is going to be. There was a whole empire, the way used cars were sold, operate, recondition, the philosophical like position. Do we fix everything? We fix a little. Do we wait till they see it right? Everyone's got a different strategy, but what this situation is highlighting is the reality of the human behavior and the prioritization that naturally happens, right? Do I want to pay a lower price, or do I want to pay a lower price, or do I want everything fixed and perfect? And we used to treat all those people the same, but now we're realizing like, oh, actually there's a lot of variety there. And there's nothing anybody in the reconditioning industry can do about that, right? What we can do is talk about the benefits of a properly reconditioned car, right?
Yeah.
As a reconditioner, I'm like, hey, look, if the car's in great cosmetic condition, people assume it's in great mechanical condition, right? And they do, it's a 1-for-1 trade-off. But there's no amount of selling, there's no amount of presenting that is going to overtake whatever the human behavior that comes out of this is, because the necessity of needing to sell at a certain price or buy at a certain price, like the necessity of it is always going to take precedence over like everything being perfect. And there's going to be a broad range. If I'm buying a luxury car, I want it to be right.
Exactly.
If I'm buying, a Jetta that is a kind of run-of-the-mill Jetta, and it's got 50,000 miles on it, and I need a good value car that's going to give me good gas mileages and be reliable, right? Am I that worried about the dent that only the dent guy can see?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. We're going to see. And I think
we will.
You have a podcast that you go on. You do, what is it, every week? Every day?
Yeah, so I kind of have two things right now. I have a podcast that is called the Clarity Compressed Podcast. I do it once a week. Clarity Compressed. And then I've also started a live streaming event for the auto industry called Automotive State of the Union.
That's right.
And so Clarity Compressed is kind of my weekly thing. It started out as a content series around Dale Pollock's book, Like I See It. Dale Pollock, founder of V Auto. If you don't know about Dale Pollock, you should learn about it because it's the industry you're in. It started as that. Now it's just my kind of like my best effort every week. But Automotive State of the Union is a live event that I started on LinkedIn when the pandemic hit. And basically I rallied every relationship and every person I could in the auto industry to put on a live event to just look, the auto industry is in a time of upheaval like everybody else. And a real powerful thing is community. And the auto industry is a very tight community. So we put on this live event and got speakers and got, different companies to help promote the event. We had 4,000 people on a 3-hour live stream, 3 months ago on LinkedIn, all dealers, industry partners, personnel. I can't believe that there's no reconditioning representation in those level of events. I saw Tom Duffy on here earlier, and he knows I'm preaching to the choir. But so this event has become a center point in the industry, and all of a sudden, like we are being seen as like a source, like automotive news. Not quite that thorough, but obviously, like this is where people come together. And so, I've been doing that, and we're going to do more. We just did our third one last week. If you go to automotivestateoftheunion.com, you can get all the previous recordings and the sessions and everything and kind of be part of that. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And there's massive space in there for some reconditioners to be involved. So if you're watching this, listening to it, you should be paying attention, be involved. Because if, the premise of this is like, hey, you sold your company to a big company and you know what I mean, as a reconditioner, it's a reconditioner's dream. Let me tell you, a big part of that was understanding the industry that I'm in, not from the reconditioner's perspective, but from the dealer's perspective. And so I went to industry events, NADA, everything, digital dealer. I learned about things that had nothing to do with reconditioning, because that's what made me a better reconditioner, is understanding, is empathy, understanding what the dealers are focused on. So if you're not doing that, you should be. If you want to be the best reconditioner, if you want to be the best, most empathetic understander of your dealer, you need to do that. Because when you come into a dealer and you say something like, oh man, margin compression is getting outrageous. So what are you doing with you ask them a question that takes them off guard, and they're like, they'll talk to you for an hour.
Oh yeah.
They'll talk to you for an hour. I've watched people dismiss, as a reconditioner, we're always the one that's dismissed from the office. We're the one that's standing outside. Like here, funny story. Now everyone's probably got their story. I drove through a dealer in Albany. I'm not going to say his name. He's not a dealer. He was a manager. He's probably not there anymore. And he knew I drove out to see him. 2 hours. I was owner of the company at the time. We had probably 20 or 30 people. Went out to talk to him. He said, that's fine. I show up at 8:30 a.m. when he asked, which was 2.5 hours from my house. So I left my house at 6, right? Got up at 5. I walk in his office. I said, hey, I'm Paul. I'm with Image Auto. We had a meeting. And he just does this, right? He goes like this. He goes, I need a minute. He doesn't even look up. I need a minute. So I walk outside the office, and it's a full glass front. So like, I walk outside and I kind of like stand to the side and try to make small talk with a salesman who's trying to do his like GM certification. The dude pulls a box of cereal out from under his desk, pours himself a bowl of cereal, and eats it for 15 minutes, and then calls me back in. So like, everybody's got that story. Everybody's got that manager that, like, it doesn't matter. He'll find something to do other than talk to you. The moral of that story is, when you have something to say that contributes to his intelligence, his knowledge, his understanding, or helps him, I've ended up sitting in the dealer GM's seat in their office as he's telling guys that are walking in with deals, I'll be with you in a minute. And it's all because I took the time to understand his needs and understand his business. I wasn't going in asking for something. I was going in giving something that was of value to him.
And take it on a personal note. I always look around when I walk in his office. Does he have a golf business card holder? Is there pictures of fish on the wall? I always go that personal route too, of trying to build that relationship. It gets them off curve. They're like, oh, this guy's not just worried about dent repair. But my the main reason I brought up was, you did an Instagram podcast with your thing that you do, and it was about kind of a reset, kind of a restart. And I thought that was really, really good. You were talking about the pandemic and where we were, and you were just kind of like, this is your time, that it's okay if you restarted.
Without a doubt.
That was hit it on the head, and I shared that with a bunch of guys throughout the industry. And I was like, this is what I've been talking about every week. If you guys are ready to eliminate some of these customers that cost you money, and they're a pain in the butt, and you want to get rid of them, this is the time for you to do it. You want to get rid of the dead wood. Now is the time, and it's okay.
It's okay. I think that's the point. So, I very much remember that. I thought about it a lot, even after recording that podcast. I just made a 5-video series. It's for dealers, but I think would be applicable to anybody in the reconditioning industry, anybody, any business. And it's called the Never Go Back Plan. It's at nevergobackplan.com. And it's just 5 free videos that help you take an internal look and look at your operations, at your marketing, at your company culture. And the premise is this: you, as a business owner, have an unprecedented, never going to come back again opportunity to reboot your business. All the pieces have been blown up by this for everybody. The pieces are all deconstructed. Don't put them back together the way they were, because at the very least, even if you had a great running business, if you put them back together the same way, guess what? It's not going to be a great running business, because the world has moved on.
It's changed.
And the world has changed. So it just kind of walks people through reconstructing the business and taking the opportunity, like you said, because you can. I say guilt-free.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guilt in the firing customers. There's guilt involved with firing people or changing processes that people hold really dear and kind of romantic about processes. When everybody's in this mode where like everything's kind of fluid, now is the time when you need to intentionally put it back together. Don't put all the things that didn't work, don't put them back in. Nope. Right? There's some people that don't get invited back to the team. There are some operational changes that you wanted to make. Hey, if you want to go to, flat pricing, average pricing, and there's resistance, guess what? Build it back that way it's the only way that you do it. Right? Now is the time to do it. Oh my gosh, if you could do one thing, flip this pandemic to be like, make it so that in a year from now, you can look back to this and be like, that was the worst situation, but I made the best business changes ever during that time.
I'll be honest with you. It's been good for me. As a business owner, as a person, just because there was so much stuff on the computer, with the Google My Business and website stuff that I never had the time to do.
Yep.
That I would sit here every day for 4 hours in the morning and teach myself and just sit here and just figure it out. If you guys didn't do that,
yes,
this was the time to put your head down and do the stuff you really didn't want to learn or didn't have the time and figure it out. And in your instance, I want to kind of go back to your story for these guys. You ended up selling your company to Dent Wizard. So do you want to kind of get into that whole, how that happened? And then we'll get into the rest from there. I didn't want to lose track.
Absolutely. So again, I'll say it again. If you build a business with the intention to sell it, you're going to have a really hard time. You're going to make different decisions constantly. I built a business around purpose and meaning, the fact that it's very hard work, and build a culture that people actually want to be around and encouraged by. It's a very difficult thing to do. But as the CEO of that company, I always said, my job is to make decisions that provide the most amount of opportunity for the most amount of people. So as I was on the process of doing that, as we were trying to make the best decisions we could and offer multiple services and see where the industry was going so we could respond well, I got a call out of nowhere from Terry Kebby, the then CEO of Dent Wizard. Now he's the chairman of the board. And he called and introduced himself. And of course, like everybody, when Dent Wizard calls, you get all your body armor on and you assume that they have the worst intentions. At least I did. Maybe I don't want to project that on everybody.
I've been there. So
and Terry was a fantastic guy. And toward the end of the conversation, he just gave me compliments about the business, and they've noticed what we've been doing. And we were a subcontractor for them with a CarMax account, and which is kind of how we even got in the ecosystem a little bit. And that was always too, like, hey, let's make sure we keep our distance. Don't want anybody mistaking you for me or me for you, right? And then Terry says, he goes, just so I wanted to see if there was really any way that we could work together in the future. And I was like, I'm like, what exactly does that mean? I said to him. He's like, well, I want to know if you'd be interested in selling your business to Dent Wizard and merging the two. I was like, oh, okay. So it took me out of left field. I never considered that or thought about it. And obviously there are all these fears and all these things that came up.
How'd you sleep that night?
Oh, I didn't. And that weekend, the next day was a Saturday. I think my wife and I were at breakfast and we're talking about it. And, I'm talking about it and I start tearing up. She's like, you should just tell them, no, you're not gonna be able to sell this business, even if you wanted to, because like everybody, it's like, am I going to be the band that just sold out to the man? It's like, that's the stigma. And that's how I thought. And as I processed through it in like, to my legit belief, like, can I keep up with the change and trajectory and the growth of the reconditioning industry? I just came through a 12-month period where we added a paint division. It was very difficult. It burnt a ton of cash, and it was just getting off the ground after 1 year, and it was hard to scale. And looking down the line and saying, like, man, I think dealers need more holistic solutions, and the CFO is making the decision. So it has to make sense to him. Like, I really was thinking, like, I don't know that I can provide people the type of opportunity. We had, a small company, relatively speaking. There are only so many leadership positions, only so many management positions. Guys are getting older, right? It's like our bodies are not the same at 45 as they were at 25. And then
how many employees did you have?
In the low to mid 40s. And so thinking, like, unless somebody ages out or quits, which people weren't quitting, right? Like the opportunity for everybody is kind of like really leveled out. And so, I told Terry, I said, look, I can't talk about this anymore until I meet your executive team face to face. I wanted boots on the ground. I needed to observe the nonverbal cues of everyone else that worked in Dent Wizard. And so I actually flew out to St. Louis, and I spent a day at Dent Wizard headquarters, met everybody. It just happened to be like one of their monthly, employee appreciation breakfasts, and came out and I started paying attention and watching and listening. I was like, all right. And I realized at the moment, like, okay, it's not the big evil that I thought it was. And I realized there's really good people that build a good company that really would provide a lot of opportunity to my team. And so, like, we started talking, and within 3 months, the business was sold. I'd bring my team on board. It was a very challenging 3 months, though.
And I remember the first time you spoke at Mobile Tech Expo 2 years ago in Orlando, and some of the things you said, it stuck with me. It's 2 years ago. There's a lot of information out on the internet and Facebook and YouTube, and a lot of guys speaking. And, you sat back and you were like, I didn't sell it for money. I felt like my guys had a good situation. They could grow more with the Dent Wizard company. And you had your next business already in your head, your marketing stuff that you're doing. That was already a passion of yours in your head working. And the one thing that really stuck with me, you did challenge coins for your guys.
Yep.
And I just sat back and I was like, that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into that real quick.
I would love to. So the challenge coin, if you're not familiar with it, you can Google it, but it's basically a two-sided coin that's often used in military applications. So different units that have it, the general can have it, the unit commander can have it. And basically it's kind of a centering point around beliefs or something meaningful. And in the military, you can't give pay raises, right? It's not a for-profit business, but you can give recognition and of someone's effort, and you can give status, an elite status to somebody by giving them a challenge coin because it means something. So we made challenge coins up for, that really represented our values, represented this philosophy of a 20-mile march. It's another story to get into, but it's really like the ongoing effort every day, right? We don't try to sprint 1,000 miles a day. It's like we do 20 miles a day, every day, rain or shine, whether it's hard, whether it's easy. And so when you got a 20-mile march medallion, a challenge coin in front of everybody, only I could give them out. And it was something that meant something. And people carried them around. They kept them in their pockets. I still have people that work for the agency today that worked for the reconditioning company. They still have them. They have them at their desks. Actually, that's a practice. And at the end, at the meeting when we transitioned, the sale closed and Dent Wizard executives flew out and we had this big company offsite. I gave everyone a challenge coin. And basically I said, the values of this company, we called it provision for life. It's like, that's a choice that you make every day. It's always been a choice that you make whether or not you want to live these values, and gave everybody a coin on the last day. And I showed a picture at the Mobile Tech Expo when I spoke of everybody the day that happened, and it was everybody, a lot of smiling faces. Mm-hmm. And I said, do these look like the faces of people that feel like they got sold out? Right? That's my favorite picture ever. Yeah. Because like that is like the indicator of like that's a race that's well run and that's people carrying a torch. And I'm happy to say like Dent Wizard actually adopted the challenge coin.
I saw that.
And made their own. I helped them design their own, and they've imparted that into their organization too. So it's really cool to see like that kind of migrate and now like move into a large organization with reach. But recognition, just say this to everyone who has anybody working with them, recognition doesn't always have to come with a dollar amount. And it's not, if you do it just to be cheap, like I'm just going to do a coin instead of a raise because I'm cheap, well, that's not going to work. But to understand that like human beings want to feel like they're a part of something. They need to feel like they're a part of something, part of a tribe. And so building a business that has value to sell, really it's just because you built a business that actually functions well and believes in something, right? If we're not like in a production business where we like stamp out widgets, and I just built a widget stamping machine, right? Now I can sell that. Reconditioning is anything but. It's the human element through and through.
Yeah. And sometimes you look back and I try to explain to some of my friends, they're like, why don't you scale? Like, you need to get more people. And I'm like,
Just scale, man.
bro, do you know how difficult it is to try to grow this business? It's very difficult. He's like, you need to get all these people and just sell it. I'm like, what am I selling?
Yeah.
I'm the business.
Yeah. Yep.
This is me. So, you know, I don't know. It's
Well,
an interesting.
That's a great segue into what I think the critical nature of any business that has sellability or scale has. And that's something that I talk about a lot now, which is the concept of brand. And brand is something that stands. It's basically, brand isn't a logo. It's not a tagline. It's not a color scheme. It's brand is not your people, right? The brand is the feeling that people get when they interact with you in some way, shape, or form. When your uniform walks in the door, right? I wanted the Image Auto brand to stand for something, regardless of the person that walked through the door. Because the second you hang your hat, your business hat, on a person, it's like, well, you're vulnerable. You can't take care of your business if Bob now has all the equity in the business, because then Bob can just be in it for Bob, right? And then you can't scale that business. And that's, I think, that is the linchpin on the businesses that can scale in this industry and the businesses that can't. Because if the brand, well, then everybody that works for you is vulnerable to you. The second you do something stupid, or you have a change of heart, or even worse, like say you get sick, or some tragedy befalls you and you're no longer the same person as a result, everything's vulnerable to it.
Oh yeah.
Right? Everyone says, well, I don't want to hire somebody and train them because they're just going to run off with my business. People told me that for 15 years. Yeah. Right? And guess what? It didn't happen. Right? So building brand, that means a defined set of things that you are about. What is your unique value proposition? Why do people want to work for you? Right? What level of service do you give? Do people live it every day? Putting your time and energy into that is what really makes your brand scalable. Then people want to work for you and they want to stay. Customers want to do business with you. And I would say, if I was in the reconditioning business right now, what I would be doing is I would be brand building. I would be building a retail brand. I would be building something that scales out and doesn't make me so reliant on one or two dealerships, because that is something that you can actually take with you and carry with you regardless of whatever situation you're in.
Very true. You get to that point to where you're not knocking on doors anymore. Mm-hmm. They see, and I've realized this just recently, they see your online presence, how your business, it does business every day. Yep. See your stuff all over media, hear about you. Yep. And I had it today. I had a brand new shop that we went to this morning, and he says, I've never met him before. And he says, your reputation is untouchable.
Oh, isn't that the best?
So I never knocked on his door. It gets to that point to where you just have to get that train rolling and try to put all the things in place, and it'll do the work for you.
Yep.
Same thing as employees. I have guys reach out all the time that, hey, let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready. Tom Duffy, let me know when you're ready. And it's funny. It's funny that, Tom. Tom was my sales guy here, and we were really good friends when he worked in Maryland. So I've known Tom for a very long time. But so you sell your company to Dent Wizard, and then you start Congruent.
So Congruent actually is right now we're a full service branding marketing agency. We work in automotive with dealers all across the country, but we also work in a lot of other industries. The website is congruentstory.com, congruentstory.com. And Congruent actually started incubating within Image Auto. I knew that I wanted to create content to talk about our culture and our internal brand and celebrate that. So celebrate our values. This was before you even had enough bandwidth to stream on YouTube. You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. Yeah. And so we bought some camera equipment, and my operations manager, who has been with me for a long time, he knew how to run a camera. We got a camera, some microphones, and we just started driving all around the greater tri-state area, interviewing our own team members about our values and why they think they're important. And we would show those videos at our annual company party. And that's how it started. So we started making content for ourselves. Then we started making content for other people. And so basically, as that grew, I knew that when the Dent Wizard sale happened, that my next step was to lean full on into the marketing agency. But even a year before the sale, I started creating content for dealers, my customers, so that I could give them something that had no ask on the other side of it. So it started, I read Dale Pollock's book, Like I See It. I said, wow, this is exactly what the industry needs to hear right now. So we got cameras together and some crew, and we shot a 10-part content series that basically summarized the book so that dealers who didn't have time to read the full book could watch it in just short increments of the video. They could show it to their sales team. And when I walked in, I said, and I asked Dale gave me like, I don't know, 200 copies of the book for free because he was just intrigued that some kid was making videos about his book. He gave me books. I walked into the dealers. I gave him a book. Hi, my name's Paul with Image Auto. Thank you for your business. It was only our existing dealers. With all the margin compression going on around, I want our dealers to be the sharpest dealers, because if you're selling cars and we have cars to recondition, so we made this content series for you. Here's a copy of Dale Pollock's book, who they all know because they use his software. And then after, without a doubt, every conversation that started with that ended an hour later in the dealer's office. And all things being equal, if pricing's the same and Image Auto does a great job, like why would I not want every shirt? Like why wouldn't I pick them?
Yeah, you're right.
And so that became congruent.
And when you were speaking about it at MT, you were so passionate about it. You were like, this was just a dream that I just kind of rolled into, and it was passion driven. And you could see that when you were going over, how it came about.
Yeah. And it's look, if you can get outside the defensiveness that naturally comes up, if you can get outside of that for just a second and start to think of the other person just for a second, this is not unique to me. It's not unique just because I can articulate it now, right? Because I couldn't always articulate it like this. I can articulate it now because of time and repetition and like being able to see over the hill a little bit. But I guarantee you, when you start thinking of like what's actually best for them, your business will unequivocally grow as a result of that. And if you think about your customers like that and think about your team members like that, it is basically human relationship 101 just overlaid into the reconditioning industry. I don't think there's any industry better than the automotive industry when it comes to people who understand people who want to relate. Granted, you get your bad eggs out there, right? You have you do. I mean, like dealers have a stigma, and a lot of them earned it. But this is not the industry it was 15 years ago. This is not the industry it was 10 years ago. I get to work in a lot of retail industries, and I have yet to see one industry where people are as obsessive about trying to cater to the desires and the needs of their customers than the automotive industry. They bend over backwards to try to give the customer what they want.
Oh yeah. At this point, you have to. It's a different vehicle sales is not what it was in 2001. It's totally different now.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to change again, right? Within this whole pandemic, I mean, you look at, I see it, friends of mine buying brand new GMs, 0% financing, why are you going to buy a used car if you're going to come back, get a brand new car with better interest?
Same payment, right? Yeah.
It's crazy. So I remember reading or hearing you were on a Gary V mentor team or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's get into that briefly.
Sure. So for those of you who know Gary Vaynerchuk, he really changed my perspective on business when I first saw him at an event. I didn't know who he was. And basically he said every business should become a media company. And what he means by that is the way you communicate now is you create content. That's why I started my podcast over 2 years ago, is because he said that, and I believed it. Little by little, I got into his ecosystem. I went to one of the first events that they had where you could, spend some money and go and spend a day at VaynerMedia in New York City to learn some stuff. I did that, but then I got invited to be part of a beta launch for a program they were starting called Vayner Mentors. And it was for just a small group of companies that they would take under their wing and give access to their full executive team and to Gary himself and build a company. His COO, I met him at an event. He reached out later and said, you should apply for this. We're going to start. We haven't announced it. We want to get some companies going before we announce it. So I didn't even know what it was called. But 90 companies applied. They picked 3. Image Auto was one of them. And literally, I got a call from Gary Vaynerchuk and Terry Kebby on the same exact day. Like that day, it was the craziest day. Gary's assistant reached out saying, can you talk to Gary later today? And I knew it was because he was going to say we were accepted. And so that call was scheduled for 3:00 p.m. I think Terry called it like 11 a.m. And I went home. I was like, honey, you're not going to believe the day that I had. But yeah, so Vayner Mentors, we had full access to them. Been down there to their headquarters in Hudson Yards many times. And they've actually, when the acquisition offer came in, I said to them, I was like, hey, I know you signed up to help us scale Image Auto, but this acquisition offer came in. Here's what I think my next step would be. What do you think? So Gary and his CFO and his chief operating officer, they looked at the contract. They listened to what I wanted to do, and they were like, look, this is a great offer. You should take this, and we'll help you build the agency. It was crazy.
Hey, lucky man over there. Lucky man,
The harder I work, right.
You look back and you're like, man, I can't believe this happened. There's a lot of guys in here that'd be like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And a lot of it's just hard work and persistence.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that can be said for just like the serendipity of the moment.
Yeah.
But the harder I work, the luckier I get. Like that whole statement is really true. Like no one ever knows. Like I don't know, maybe 6 years, right? I'm doing the same thing now with my agency. I'm marching forward. I'm starting this business differently than I did the other one because the other Image Auto was bootstrapped from the ground up. Every bit of profit went in. I went through a long period, like a decade, when a lot of my guys were making more money than I was.
Yeah.
You have to swallow your ego to do that, right? Because if I wanted to live a better life for those 10 years, like I would have had a better life and I wouldn't have sold the business and I wouldn't have what I have today and I wouldn't have another opportunity. But like looking now, I'm doing the same thing, like with Congruent, had some resources from the sale of Image Auto. So I've invested a substantial amount of that money into growing Congruent because I believe that is the next evolution and the next step. And just honestly, like running an agency at a major loss for a couple of years still stings.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm not in the position where like I'm worried about next week's paycheck, right? But at the same point, like it stings really bad to have invested. Like, and reconditioning industry is very similar to marketing in the same way as like the value of your business could disappear overnight.
100%.
Like your balance sheet, your profit and loss, your balance sheet isn't because you have like real estate or, major equipment. It's like, no, you have people, like all of your assets walk out the door every day and you hope that they come back the next day. Yeah. Right. And that's the marketing industry is the same way. And so, I guess I'm a glutton for that kind of thing, but
hey, it's passion driven, man.
It's passion and it's what matters. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I watch your stuff all the time and I'm like, sometimes I sit back and I'm like, it pumps you up. Some of the stuff you're putting out there is just so, I guess, cause you understand our business and it kind of works together. And it's really good information. I told a lot of guys this week to go to your Instagram page and just kind of get some homework on you, just so they had a little back, so they could sit back and say, who is this guy? Yeah. And I've been a pain in the ass. And I said this to Paul before we got on. I said, I have been persistent because we've been working on this. I've been trying to get him on for like 7 months. He's a busy guy and just this little Dent Digest show. So I appreciate you coming on and just taking the time,
Of course.
Now, a couple things I wanted to bring up. We're starting to get towards that hour mark. Where do you see in the reconditioning business in the branding? Where can guys not really get the most for their money, but as in the most for their time spent? Would it be Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn? I mean, like if you're going to spend a lot of time in marketing and branding and
easy answer, right? Here's the good thing. I would have given you a different answer 7 months ago. You need to be on LinkedIn. If you're trying to build a business, a B2B, anything, you need to be on LinkedIn right now. And as hard and heavy as you can get on LinkedIn, you need to get on there. LinkedIn has become a real platform in the last 12 months. It used to be just for people looking to get hired or looking to hire someone else. That is no longer the case. This pandemic has only put that on steroids. Your dealers, your sales managers, your salespeople, they are on LinkedIn now. So you need to be on LinkedIn. If you're trying to build a retail brand, I think you should be on Instagram. I think you should be on TikTok because TikTok is there's a lot of opportunity on TikTok. I have not taken the plunge, but when you're going retail B2C, you need to create content that people find interesting, right? And you can make automotive reconditioning interesting because it's fun. It's like before and after. Anything where there's a before and after, you can have a heyday. You can be creative around how the damage actually happened, right? You can you can have fun with it. So different approaches for retail or B2B. If it's B2B, absolutely you need to be on LinkedIn. Create content that is not self-serving, but that serves the audience you're going to be in. And just like the principle of anything social media related, you can't just ask for things. You have to contribute. Go on people's feeds, like their posts, make meaningful, thoughtful comments, join groups that don't just revolve around reconditioning. When I started going to events, I was the only reconditioner in the room. The only reconditioner in the room. And guess what? That really hasn't changed. I'll get on Tom Duffy's case because if anybody has the opportunity to do it, it's Dent Wizard. And guess what? I'll say it. They're not doing it. So the game is wide open. If you
don't tell him all the keys. Don't tell him all the keys.
You know how many layers Tom Duffy has to go through to get anything approved? I hope he's still watching because he's going to text me after this.
Oh man. But I try to break it down as
you have an unprecedented opportunity right now to leapfrog everybody and put your time into making content that actually brings value to B2B clients on LinkedIn. If it's B2C, go Instagram or TikTok.
And TikTok gets the younger crowd. I've noticed TikTok is in that 16 to 18.
It's going up every day.
Yeah.
TikTok. I just heard Gary say this. I think it was last week. He's like, TikTok's going to be Instagram in 18 months.
Yeah.
And so like there's unprecedented reach on TikTok. Like you'll make videos about dent removal on TikTok. And if you have fun with it and do a good job, guess what? You're going to get like 100,000 views when you would get like 6 views on Facebook if you did something.
Yeah. And I've seen a change with Instagram and Facebook. I get more of a response on Instagram than I do on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just area, how it's all driven. But I'm big on it. I don't know how many times your phone was probably getting blasted because I've been tagging you for 2 days,
Awesome. I reposted.
So, you just got to put the time in, I sit here last night. I sat here and I make little pictures and thumbnails and I do it going to the bathroom, sit there and just build it on there's so much technology out there.
You have to put in the work, but there's no barrier between you and it.
No.
You have to put in the work though. It doesn't just happen. Without a doubt. Does not just happen.
Now we got like 5 more minutes. If you want to put out there about your book, you want to go through that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
How can guys find it? What's it about?
Yeah,
just kind of a brief.
For sure. I will say this, that if anybody wants to connect and get the most value, for sure, either my podcast is probably the most regular content I put out. And I feed off principles. Like my content is kind of real time when I put it out. It's like what I'm working through or what I just worked through. So claritycompressed.com or pauljdaly.com is where like the whole ecosystem lives. I did write a book. Now it's probably about 1.5 years ago. I wrote a book called The Automotive Manifesto, and you can get it on Amazon, The Automotive Manifesto. And it got reviewed by some people at Vayner actually, and some other people. So basically the premise of the book is that human connection and spending your time on building a model of a dealership that's based on connection and not based on like the old way of doing things and not based on the margin you should have on a used car is really the way forward. And, I wrote the book to alienate, literally, I wrote the book to alienate like 95% of the industry because I only want to work with the progressive ones. So I don't want to waste time. So I wrote this book. It's funny now that the pandemic hits, if you go back and read the book, you realize that what I suggested in the book, the dealers who did that are actually in an amazing place right now and they're thriving. So it's fun to actually see. It's not fun to go through a pandemic, but it's fun to see that the philosophy and the theory of human connection actually has played out that way when it all comes down to it. So that's called theautomotivemanifesto.com. It's on Amazon, or you can get it from my website. There's audiobook, there's all, the usual stuff. But even on the website, there's a lot of free stuff too. Like if you just want to like see some of the content.
Even just your Instagram. I mean, it's just, you can go back. I mean, there's a ton of great content on there, and really, you're big on empathy. I hear you talking about empathy all the time. So it's putting out some good stuff, man. It's nice.
Swinging the axe, man. It's like just anything. The first one's not great. Go back to the very beginning. I never delete a post. So you can scroll way back, and you can see when I'm all awkward in front of the camera and I'm looking the wrong way and like all that crap. Leave it on there.
I hear guys all the time. They're like, man, I can't record a YouTube video. I can't do this. And I'm like, why not? They're like, I'm just not comfortable. And I'm like, bro, you think I was comfortable coming on here 50 some weeks ago to start this show? No, you just do it and you evolve with it.
But still, look, like that being said, like everybody's got different skill sets.
Yeah.
Right. Look, if you're not comfortable on camera and you're not good on camera and you don't think you ever will be, it's like, well, take great before and after pictures and have some fun with it. Like there's something that you're good at. You're good at writing. Good. Write meaningful content.
Yeah.
Right. Like what are you good at, or what are you at least okay at that you can get good at? Right. If you can't talk without stuttering because you have a stuttering thing, like, well, then maybe live video isn't for you.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not. But regardless, you have zero excuse not to do anything. Right. Want to suffocate the excuses because social media allows you any media platform you want. Right. You can just share other people's commentary. Right. And there you go. You're producing content.
Yeah. I mean, I took yours. I reposted your post from Instagram and it was like 70 some likes right off the bat. So,
right. Could become a curator.
Yeah. And it
no excuse.
You get to a point to where you do all those things and your business looks larger than it really is. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We go back to that franchise thing. So the biggest thing is get out of your comfort zone and just figure it out. You know what I mean? You'll figure it out. If you get in there, you're like, man, I'm terrible at this. A year and a half ago, I never knew how to make a video on YouTube and using Final Cut Pro and all that good stuff. I had no clue.
Right.
The good thing is now in this age, YouTube is a magical thing.
Absolutely.
How can guys find you on social media, your website? And
Yep. If you go to Paul J. Daly, like in my name right there in the bottom corner of the screen right there, if you go to pauljdaly.com, there are links to all my social profiles and pretty much everything I put out on a regular basis. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Put out my podcast every week. It's on Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. And got some other stuff cooking. The most recent thing is nevergobackplan.com. It's free. If you sign up, you get an email and you get some videos. So I try to make as much as I can. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it because I get to connect with good people like you, Ryan.
Hey, and he's not scared to say that he screwed up, because if you go back there to one of his Instagram posts, he filmed all this stuff and he didn't have the mic plugged in. So it happens, even the guys that do this stuff all the time, so
I was so pissed.
I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been fun. We could sit here for hours and talk, but I can hear your kid in the background.
Is that you hear the baby crying?
I don't want to take too much of your time up, but I really appreciate your time. I think you brought some value to these guys, and just trust me, follow him. It's really good stuff, and you can definitely implement some of the stuff he's saying directly into your business. So thanks, Paul. I greatly appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. It's good spending time with my reconditioning family. I love you guys. Keep fighting and reach out if you ever need anything. I mean it.
Thanks, Paul. Remember, guys, keep it real, and I will see you on the next one.